You are a modern Muslim woman, ambitious, devoted, and honestly sometimes exhausted from trying to be all things to all people. Welcome to the Thriving Muslim Woman, the show where we stop chasing impossible standards and start reclaiming the peace and power already written into your design. We blend spiritual truths with practical mindset tools to help you redefine success on your own terms. It's time to nurture your soul while elevating your life. I'm your host, Danielle. Let's begin. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. If you are a Muslim woman who prays, plans, and works hard, yet you still find yourself stuck, maybe it's in a cycle of anxiety, maybe burnout, or the quiet fear, the insidious fear that you're not quite enough, then this episode can be your radical turning point, inshallah. We often look outside ourselves for validation, but today we're going to look inside to a very important truth that you were actually created in the best stature, in the best form. The problem is actually in our own limiting beliefs that we've learned, beliefs that we've practiced time and time again throughout our lives. And they're like dust or rust covering up our beautiful design and the possibility that we've been created for. So this week, we're going to introduce a very important model that you can actually use in your life to begin to shift and change and really create the results that you would like in your life. And we're going to provide a belief audit that is a powerful tool. It's going to help you expose the toxic, fear-based thoughts that you have and replace them with the foundational truth of your self-worth and reality. So let's start by talking about the coaching foundation. So this is going to be a tool that you can use. It's great to use it with a coach or with someone else, but it's so powerful and it's fairly simple. So we're going to talk through it today, inshallah, and I hope that we're going to make it easy enough where you can use this on your own as well. And just so you know, I'm also going to be looking at the comments, so feel free to comment and respond. And if you want to let me know that you're online right now, you can comment with your name or where you're listening in from. And as we go through all of these concepts, I'm going to be asking you to share as well. So if you want to interact with me, I'm going to be looking out for that as well in the comments, inshallah. Okay. So now I'm going to introduce to you this cognitive behavioral coaching tool called the model. I like to call it the results model because it is really an engine of change and creating results. Okay. So we're going to basically move away from this feeling, this idea that we are victims of our circumstances and instead creators of our own experience in the world. So there are times just to kind of drive this home, maybe you can think of an example, a time where two people experienced similar circumstances. For example, maybe two people who are, struggling financially. Maybe they're poor, maybe they're homeless, right? Maybe you've heard stories of people in that situation who are actually very happy, right? They're at peace, they're at ease, they're happy. Maybe they don't have material things in the world. Maybe they're struggling on some level, but at the same time, they're experiencing a spiritual satisfaction, right? And then someone else in the same exact circumstances might be suffering. They might feel like everything's out to get them. The whole world is out to get them. They'll never amount to anything. Their life is terrible, right? Two people with the same exact circumstances. And I have a story to kind of demonstrate this, to show how similar circumstances or the same circumstance can result in very wildly different results. So imagine two visionary women, Amira and Hafsa, and they poured their souls and their savings into building a business, okay? A luxury, modest fashion brand, let's say. And let's say they spent 2 years perfecting the designs, right? They're doing so much work. They have to figure out production. They have to, find the right designers and the fabrics. They secured ethical sourcing. They prepared their grand launch. They're building up to this for months and months. They see their brand as a way to serve their community with excellence, right? They feel like they're going to be providing something really valuable to Muslim women. And they believe in this mission. But just 3 months after their highly publicized launch, A devastating supply chain failure leads to a massive public recall of their main collection. The press is brutal. Everyone online is just hammering them. The debt was overwhelming, and the company failed spectacularly, collapsing almost overnight. Both women lost their investments, their immediate reputation, and the external validation of being successful founders, right? So this is one circumstance, two women, okay? And in this case, their focus, their experience of the circumstance was different. So Amira, she was focused on the external result, the perfect Instagram feed, the validation from industry insiders, the pride of being a successful female entrepreneur. And when the brand dissolved, she internalized that failure as a definitive judgment on her own identity. So she thought, I'm a failure. She felt crushing shame. She withdrew from her friends. She didn't want to pick up the phone. She didn't want to see anybody. And she withdrew from the professional community. And she spent 6 months paralyzed, unable to look for a new job or do anything else or even talk about the venture. And so she had built her self-worth on a moving target, and that moving target disappeared. The other sister, Hafsa, she was upset. She grieved the loss, but she was back and she was consulting for small businesses within 3 weeks. And from the start, her spiritual focus, her intention had been, I intend for the sake of Allah to serve my community with excellence and to do the best possible, to be the best possible custodian of the creative and managerial skills that He gave me, right? So she knew that she had some skills she wanted to share. She wanted to do it for the sake of her creator, to serve her community. That was her intention. And so because her value was anchored in that, her effort, the external failure was actually just a data point. Okay, this thing didn't work, right? I tried this. It didn't work. It was a completed lesson, not a character judgment. She didn't internalize that. She achieved her intention. She worked for a specific sake, and all of her effort would not go to waste as a result, right? So regardless of that final balance sheet and what happened with the business, she didn't use that as an excuse to prevent her from moving forward in life or continuing with that same intention. So it's the same loss, the same crisis, but two wildly different lives. So maybe you can think right now of something that happened in your life that kind of knocked you down, that felt like a real loss and held you back. And what might that be? Maybe you can share in the comments. I am in the midst of a situation like this right now. About a year ago, I was diagnosed with cancer. And that's another circumstance, right? That's a fact. You can see it on the scans. The doctors, know about it. It shows up in blood tests, whatever. It's a fact that is indisputable, right? But the response to that, the experience that I have choice over, right? And so you may see two very different people, for example, diagnosed with cancer. One that is, and actually one of my providers, I go to a chiropractor, and she tells me that the other cancer patients she helps have a very different attitude. And she's very surprised when I walk in the room and I'm smiling and, I'm talking about it with her. And she told me that other people are very down. They're very sad. They're hopeless, right? So there can be two different experiences of the same exact thing, like two people having cancer. Why aren't the results the same, or why aren't the experiences of that circumstance the same? So this model that I'm going to share with you is going to help break down why people have different results in life, even if they have similar circumstances. And then it's going to give you agency over controlling the things you can change, right? Changing the things you can change, even if the circumstances are out of your control. So let's get that model breakdown on the screen there. There we go. Okay, so you can actually take notes on this. If you're in a place where you can take notes, just write down CTFAR to represent the different lines. And you can use this again and again for every single circumstance in your life and every result that you have already. So if you're already experiencing some sort of result, let's say an unwanted result, you can reverse engineer and find out, where is that coming from? How am I creating this in my life? Okay. So I hope that as we go through this, you're going to be able to actually see, as you apply this to your own life, how even if the circumstance doesn't look so good right now and it feels like the circumstance is the reason that you're, for example, failing, or you're unhappy, or you're struggling in one way or another, or you're feeling overwhelmed, that actually the circumstance isn't the cause, right? There's another cause. So first of all, before we jump into this, I want you guys to think of something in your life right now that you wish you could change. Something that's not ideal, something that's a challenge or a struggle in your life. If you want to jot it down in the chat, I can take a look at it with you, inshallah. But otherwise, just keep it in your mind, or you can write it down on your own piece of paper at home, inshallah. All right, so the first letter here, C, is circumstance. And that's a neutral fact that everyone agrees on. So for example, I lost my job. My child is crying right now. I have cancer. These are neutral facts. Everybody can agree on them, right? And this is the only thing that we can control. So I just want you to notice here how what often happens immediately when we think of a circumstance is we automatically make a judgment about it. For example, I have cancer, that's bad, right? My child is crying, I'm a terrible mother. I lost my job, I'm a failure. So we often jump to the next step whenever the circumstance pops up, and that makes it feel very true. Okay, but what we're doing here with this model is we're breaking it down. So the next step is the thought. Okay, so now this is your thought, your sentence about the circumstance. Okay, so I lost my job. The thought may be, I'm a failure. My child is crying. The thought may be, this child is so difficult. Or it may be, I'm just not a good mom. I don't know how to do this. Those are thoughts. Okay. So I hope that as we do this, you can start to see how the thought and the circumstance are actually two separate things, right? And putting this down on paper is so effective because you're forced to separate those things out. You're forced to create kind of a gap between the circumstance and then your thought about the circumstance, right? And then we're going to go into this later, like how do you change? We can change the thought, and that's going to change the rest of this model. Okay. So let's keep going with this one. The next step is feeling. So now that you've had a thought, the thought is going to generate an emotion. And whenever you're doing this, if you're going to work this out for yourself, you want to stick to one emotion, because you might say, well, I feel shame, I feel guilt, I feel anxiety. There might be a lot of things that are coming up, right? But you can separate all of them out because every feeling is going to have a different effect. Okay. So let's use the examples that I shared already. So if we lost our job and we said, I'm a failure, that was our thought. The feeling, the emotion that might come from that is shame. It might be anxiety, right? If you have that thought, I'll never catch up. This is too hard. That might create anxiety. I just have too much on my plate. I have no time. Those thoughts might create a sense of overwhelm, right? I'm not a good mom. That thought might create a feeling of guilt. Okay. So you're going to start to notice and maybe you can put in the chat, what are some of the feelings that are coming up for you? What feelings have you been dealing with lately? What are some feelings that pop up for you maybe on a regular basis that don't feel so good, that maybe you'd like to shift? All right. Now, what happens when we have a feeling? What does the emotion do, right? Emotion is there for a reason. We often try to kind of not feel our feelings, but they're there as messengers and messages for us. And they're telling us, they're giving us information, right? If you're feeling anxiety, what kind of action or inaction might that create, right? So what happens is that our feelings, they lead to actions. The actions are derived out of our emotions. So that's why action comes next. So if you're going to write this out on your paper, you have the C, the T, the F, and now the A. The A is for action. And the action is caused by your feelings, right? So if you're feeling happy, if you're feeling confident, what kind of action will that produce, right? Like let's say you're working on something, you feel really confident about it, you're going to go ahead and you're going to tackle that project, right? But if you're feeling really anxious and you're feeling a lot of shame, you may be procrastinating, right? If you're feeling shame, you might avoid calls. You might not want to pick up the phone and have a conversation with a friend or family member. If you're feeling frustrated, right? You're feeling overwhelmed, frustrated, or guilty even with your child, you might start yelling, right? So the action is coming from those feelings, and the feelings are coming from the thoughts that you have about a specific circumstance. And then your action is what creates your result. So you place an R next, and that stands for result. Okay, and I see in the comments their emotion is disappointed, right? So if you're feeling disappointed, what kind of action or inaction does that create for you? Okay, and I see grief, I see freaking out. Thank you guys for your comments. And worry, feeling of regret. So there's a bit of fear in there, right? So this is where, if you were going to write this out for yourselves and write this model out in the feeling line, you would do a separate one for fear. You would do a separate one for regret, a separate one for grief, right? And then freaking out, I think, is also maybe a bit of fear or maybe confusion, right? So then what you would do is you would go back and say, well, you can go either way. So right now we're going down. Let's go down the list. Okay. So what are those feelings creating in terms of action or inaction? So you can either do something or you can not do something. So sometimes inaction is the A line, right? Like, I'm procrastinating. I'm not working on that thing, or I'm not picking up the phone. I'm not making that phone call. I'm not getting around to whatever it is, right, that you want to be getting to. What are you doing or not doing? Okay, so after you do your action, what happens? So if you procrastinate on a project, what's going to happen? What's the outcome that your action's creating, right? If you're always like, you feel shame, and so you're having a lot of, inaction around your job, for example, you're not putting out resumes, for example, right? Then what's going to happen? You're probably going to stay longer in that situation. Right? Or maybe not get a job that you really want, that you feel fulfilled. You might feel more isolated if you continue to not pick up the phone because of that feeling of shame. And that kind of is just going to help it be a cycle, right? Where that feeling doesn't go away and the inaction remains, right? So your results always prove your initial thought. So if the thought is, I'll never catch up, what's going to happen? You're going to feel anxiety, you're going to feel overwhelmed, you're not going to take action, and then you're probably not going to catch up. It's not going to help you catch up, right? And then that's going to prove the thought. So now you feel like it's really true. Like it was true all along. This circumstance was terrible, right? Look what happened. I never made it. I never got anywhere. I am a terrible mother because look, my kids are constantly crying, or, whatever. They're not succeeding in this way or that way. And so it just is like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? That's how results are created. So to get a new result, you have to actually create a new feeling. And to create a new feeling, you have to choose a new thought. So here's the fun part, because we often don't feel like our thoughts are our choice, right? There are things that just pop up in our head, right? Something happened to me, and I have this thought and this belief, and it's happening, and now I'm feeling this. And we feel like it's out of our control. But the truth is, it is 100% within our control. It does take practice, okay? So if you're going to start working with this model, which I highly recommend you guys sit down and try this with something. We'll go over a way to do that later on in this program, inshallah. But you're going to notice that the thoughts feel very automatic and they feel very true. Right? But what I'm offering you today, and I invite you to embrace this concept and try it out for yourself, is that you do have choice over your thoughts and your beliefs. Okay? So you can actually choose what to think. So let's say my child is crying. Before, maybe I used to think, wow, she's so demanding. She's so irritating. I can't take this. What am I doing wrong? Right? Those might have been my thoughts in the past. If I want to choose a new thought, what would be a good choice? Can you guys give me some suggestions of a new thought that I can choose if my child is crying, right? If before I'm thinking it's all my fault, I'm not a good mom, I've been neglecting her, what's wrong, or she's so difficult. I might choose a thought, for example, my child needs me, right? She wants to be close to me. Or I can just think about her that she's She's so new to the world. She doesn't know how to regulate her emotions, right? What kind of feelings are those thoughts going to bring up in me? They're going to bring up feelings of mercy, of compassion, of love, right? And I personally experience a huge difference in this now because I have 5 kids, alhamdulillah, who are older. They're all in their teens, right? And when they were young, I did blame myself a lot if they were crying, if things didn't seem to be going well. I blamed myself. I thought about how difficult it was, right? And now with my new daughter, who's only almost 2 years old, alhamdulillah, it's so different. If she's crying, I'm able to think about her in a very different way. And it creates such different emotions of mercy, of compassion, of love. Instead of being like, oh, this is so frustrating, I just want to instead pick her up and hug her and hold her, right? And find out what's going on. Why is she feeling this way? Is she hungry? Is she tired? Does she just need to be close to me, right? So I take completely different actions than I used to when I would feel frustrated or worried or scared or feel a ton of guilt, right? And then what's the result? Completely different result, right? So you can choose your thoughts, and it does take practice, but it is possible. So I highly, highly recommend that you spend a little bit of time and effort on looking at, especially if there's a circumstance that's really challenging, that you're finding really challenging in your life right now, or if there is a result that you're getting that is unwanted. Break it down with this model and write out, what are the circumstances? What are the thoughts that I'm having about this circumstance? And beliefs. What beliefs do I have about it? And then what are the feelings that those thoughts are generating? And I love that, because look how there's something in between the feelings and the circumstances. We often believe that the feelings we have are simply because of the circumstances. That is not true. The feelings we have are a direct result of our thinking. Okay? And we have agency over what we think. And when you start to plant new thoughts in your mind, you're actually creating new neural networks. You are rewiring your brain. And as difficult as it may seem at first to think a new thought, like if you've been waking up every morning and thinking a certain thought about yourself or what's possible every single day of your life for years and years on end, it's not going to change overnight with ease. There's going to be some friction there, right? It's like Joe Dispenza describes it as stepping into the river of change. So imagine a river. It's flowing, it's pushing in one direction, right? Those are your constant thoughts. Those are your habits things you've been thinking for years and years. They want to push you down the river. But you need to kind of stand strong and wade through that friction until you get to the other side. When you are consistent about replacing those old, unfruitful, unproductive, negative thoughts with something better, yes, there will be friction, but over time, that will become the new neural network in your brain that will fire automatically. So it's about practice, about being consistent and making that deliberate change in your thinking. So you're not creating your reality by just kind of wishing and, just not liking where you're at. It's with steady, repeated, chosen thoughts. Okay, so it's very intentional. And again, just want to re-emphasize that your beliefs are a part of this thinking, right? Because we have beliefs that have been established, truths that have been established for us over time. And there are some that may be very beneficial, and there are some that are just not serving you, and they're not helping you at all, and they're not helping you live up to the goodness that you've been created with. All right. So how do you guys feel about that so far? Tell me what you're thinking as a result. Does any of that seem, like it doesn't make sense, or is it difficult to understand? Or are you like, no, I'm pretty sure that whatever I believe is 100% true, or it is my circumstances and that's why I'm in this situation? I want to hear from you, your feedback. And also just if you check inside yourself right now, like, do you really believe that you are worthy of good? How worthy do you think you are of success, of having a good life, of thriving? This is a really, really important question. And this whole podcast is going to be about how to thrive, right? It's going to be about how to thrive, really regardless of what our circumstances are. And it has to start on a really fundamental level. If we don't believe that we are worthy of good, that we are worthy of success, it's going to be very difficult, right? If that's our thought, what kind of actions are we going to take? They're not going to align with success. Our actions are not going to align with inviting and bringing and accepting and welcoming and a good into our lives, right? So it has to start here. So I wonder if you have asked yourself this question, what comes up for you? You know, when you look at yourself in the mirror, what do you see? And now we're going to bring in some Islamic theology, and this is going to actually validate our inherent worth as human beings and the potential that each and every one of us has been born with. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we can go to the next slide, by the way, has created us in the best stature. So in Surah Teen, he says, Ahsani taqwim, that he's created man in the best form. This is the baseline of worthiness, right? You are created in a way that's not fundamentally flawed. That means everything's possible for you as a creation of God, right? You've been created in the best stature, right? And that same surah tells us what takes us out of that, right? What knocks us down, what lowers us from that, what tarnishes that, right? And we've been given something called the Fitrah, our innate nature. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that every child is born upon the Fitrah, this innate nature that's original, pure, good blueprint of the soul, naturally inclining us towards the worship of our Creator, the oneness of God, and towards goodness, towards virtue. We've all been given that. So where does everything else come from then? If we've been created in the best form, we have this fitrah, what happened, right? What went wrong? The limiting beliefs, they're like dust, noise, rust, covering all of that goodness up. And they're learned, right, from outside of ourselves, our responses to the environment that we live in, our response to the culture that we're raised in, to, as a result of misinterpretations of childhood trauma, right? Things we experience in life that shift and change our beliefs about ourselves and about the world. It's just like it's tarnishing that fitrah. And the limiting beliefs can actually activate feelings of shame, right? What is shame? Shame is different than guilt, right? Guilt, and this, if you look into Brené Brown's work, you can learn much more about this. It's a really important fundamental difference. Guilt is like, I made a mistake, right? The action I took wasn't so good, Shame is on a deeper level. It is on an identity level. It's something like, I'm bad. I'm broken. Something's wrong with me. I'm not worthy. That's shame. And shame is automatically attached with who we are, our identity, how we see ourselves. So if you see yourself as bad, then every action you take is going to validate that. If you see yourself as broken, the actions you take are going to prove that. You're going to make mistakes. If you say, I'm clumsy, you're going to keep dropping things. If you say, I'm not good with names, you're going to forget almost every name that you are told, right? But what I want this segment to assure you of is that shame is just a lie about your created nature. You are not created bad. You are created good. Anything else beyond that is a choice that you have choice. You have agency over it, right? And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent us the Quran and guidance, right? We're all capable of following His guidance. He created us with that good nature, with that fitrah, that natural orientation towards Him and His worship alone. And He gave us guidance to help us along that path, right? So whenever we've gone wrong and we deviated from that goodness, that is something we have choice over. And He wouldn't have sent us guidance and there wouldn't be a judgment day if we didn't have choice, right? We get to choose our thoughts and which direction we want to go. Surah Al-Asr is another surah that talks about, it talks about it in the converse way, that we're in loss, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us what takes us out of being in a state of loss. It's believing and doing good deeds. And notice, like in our model, right? What's the second piece? It's belief, thoughts. So changing our beliefs. And in Islam, alhamdulillah, we have beliefs to anchor onto that are inherently good for us, inherently healthy, and inherently powerful enough to guide us towards success. So this is really the place to look at, right? What are my beliefs? And what beliefs am I really acting on? Like I say I believe in God. I say I believe in the Day of Judgment in the Akhirah, but what are my actions showing, right? So this is another area to investigate. What are my true beliefs and which ones am I prioritizing? What are the most important? So you might take a moment and like write down, what are some of the beliefs that I have? Okay, I believe, in that God created me, and I believe in the Day of Judgment. But I also believe that, I'm not good enough. And I believe that, life is hard and terrible, and, illness is unfair. Like what are all those things? And then you're going to try to sort through them and then decide which are the ones that I want to deliberately choose, right? Which are the ones that are going to actually guide me and take me to that Day of Judgment in the best state possible. So I can say, I can feel, I can know that I can be successful, right? In this life and the next. That's really that should be the top of the list. What are those things that will get you there? Those are the beliefs you want to start feeling feelings from and taking action on first, right? And then you're going to look and you're going to see maybe there are some other beliefs that really contradict that, right? And what might some of those beliefs be? I'm going to take a look quickly in the chat. Okay. No worries. I just want to say to some of you guys in the chat, you don't have to think of an answer right now. Listen to this, let it simmer in your mind, and maybe try practicing a few times. I'm going to give you a tool before we end, and you can use that and see what comes up for you. Give it a chance. Don't think if it's not working the first time, or if I'm struggling thinking about, figuring out what are the thoughts and beliefs that I have. There's nothing wrong with you. We often, like I said, we think that they're just natural. They just pop up. The thoughts are just there. The beliefs are just there. We don't feel like they're changeable, right? So it takes a bit of work and a bit of effort to start to tease all of these things out, separate them, and then start to change them, okay? So now we're going to look at that tool so that we as women, we can stop being generally overwhelmed, and we can pinpoint the exact beliefs that we need to change. And this is super critical, right? If we want to get better results, if we want to have success in this life, then this is critical. Okay, so this tool is how you're going to reverse engineer your current results back to the core belief that created them. This is an important step, and this can also be really fun. So if you're having a result right now, something going on in your life that you're like, I'm not happy with this isn't how I want my life to be, then you can actually try to reverse engineer that and go back and find out what are the thoughts that are creating this result. Okay, so if you want to share some of the results maybe that you're having in your life right now in the comments, what are you experiencing that's an unwanted result? And then that you want to actually try and reverse engineer using this tool. All right. So now your belief is a prediction of those results. So that result is going to basically be a mirror of the thought or the belief that is causing it, right? So if you are, let's look at some ideas here. So if you think it's selfish to prioritize your own needs, then guess what? You're not going to be prioritizing your own needs. So if you're not getting enough sleep, you're not eating well, you're not getting any exercise, you're barely able to take care of yourself, you're barely able to go after anything that you really want to do, right? It probably goes back to a thought or a belief that it's selfish to do those things, or I have no time, everyone else needs me, and there's just no time for me. Those are the thoughts and beliefs that are causing that same result. So if this is the case, can any of you guys relate to that? Like, I don't have time to take care of myself. I'm not prioritizing my needs. I'm not exercising the way that I should. I'm not even eating the way that I know I should, right? If that's happening for you, do you have a belief similar to like, it's selfish to prioritize myself? Or is it something more like there's just no time because I need to take care of everyone else, right? So if you have either one of those, what we want to do, the next step now, once you've kind of reverse engineered and you looked at, okay, what's causing this result to happen in my life? You want to reframe it. So if you were going to reframe this one, it's selfish to prioritize my needs and my goals. We can reframe that. And alhamdulillah, Islam has like all the answers to everything, right? We can actually reframe this as worship. Self-care is worship. Now, what if when I said, you know what, I don't have time to sleep, I don't have time to eat, I don't have time to exercise, my goals don't matter. If I reframe that, I said, you know what, taking care of my body and my well-being is worship. Like God gave me this body. What am I doing to it? How am I treating it? Am I grateful for this body that he gave me? What if taking care of this body is worship? Right? That becomes an act of ibadah, an act of worship. So now when you go take a shower, when you eat healthy food, when you exercise, when you go to sleep on time, those can be worship for you. You do it in God's name for his sake, to cherish, protect, care for that body that he gave you, right? And to be able to care for those people that you're saying, you don't have time for yourself because of, what if you took care of yourself so well so that you could give to them in a great way, in a beautiful way? Let's look at another one. I'm not smart or strong enough to lead. So maybe there's a goal you want to go after, but you just feel like, I'm not good enough for that. That's not for me. I'm not smart enough to do this. I'm not strong enough to do that. You can reframe that. Like, let's say you have a vision, right? And you want to go after it, but you're really doubting yourself. You can reframe it and say, like, I can achieve that with God's help, right? So with God's help, with his permission, right? And know that and genuinely, check in. And is it something that is pleasing to God that you want to pursue? And if it is, and you ask for his help, right? Or you make istikhara about it, asking him, guide me to what's best for me. And then you go after it and pursue it, right? It's not from you. It's not whether or not you're good enough or whether or not you're smart enough, right? But only by God's permission, only by his help. And that's a completely different way of approaching a task, right? What about this one? Success will make me arrogant or distracted from Allah. Sometimes people don't go after things because they're worried that it's going to make them arrogant or distract them from what's more important. And so, sometimes we give up things or we don't do things because we're afraid. But what if you put them both together and you anchor whatever pursuit you're in an intention to do it for his sake, for God's sake? Then that entire action can become worship. And then you have to keep checking in with yourself, right? And making sure that your intention is clear. So now we're going to look at replacing the lie with truth. So this moment of reframing it's an act of mental discipline. Like I said, it's not easy. It does take work and it takes discipline. You have to keep trying to do it again and again and again. It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen in one time. It's something you have to commit to, right? So if you want better results and if you want true success in this life, then you need to begin working on your thinking, right? So if you just understand that, if you believe that and you commit to it, and then you start taking action on it day after day after day, little by little, then that is what is going to make the biggest change. But it can also be an act of spiritual discipline, right? So if we're doing this, we're turning it into an act of worship by aligning our thinking with our true purpose in life, right? And that's a great way to check into, like when you want some sort of result, is that result something really good for me? Like, am I going to be proud of that on the day of judgment? Is that something I'll be pleased with? And then if not, like, what are some other things that maybe you're leaving off that you could have been doing that would have been more powerful, right? So it's another great way. We can use this as well to kind of check in on that level and make sure that things actually align with the beliefs that we decided, yes, I do believe this and I want to stick with that and that will serve me well in this life, right? Like believing that, Allah is the only one worthy of worship and then following his guidance, for example. All right. So we want to start by identifying the lies, the limiting beliefs the T's that are really not true, right? So like, I'm not worthy of a happy life. I'm not worthy of thriving. I'm not worthy of, of success, of ease, of whatever it is. Those are all limiting beliefs. I'm bad. Okay, so we want to identify what those are. And that's where that tool we popped up in the beginning is going to be super helpful. Just identify it, find out what it is. What is the lie? And you can ask yourself that question. Is this true? And then if it comes up, yeah, it's true. You get to ask yourself again, is it really true? Like, for example, in my case, cancer, right? Oh, cancer is bad. It's terrible. Poor thing. Is that really true? Or is there anything good that can come from this? Right? Is there a different way to look at it? So you're going to double down. Is it true? Is it really true? Is it 100% true? You identify the lies, the things that are living in your head day and night, rent free. And then we're going to start to then shift it to what is really true. Declare the truth. So you're going to replace the lie with an affirmation that's rooted in faith, preferably, right? So Allah created me in the best stature. Ahsani taqweem, right? He said that in the Quran. Allah gave me the fitrah. He placed capacity within me. My worth is non-negotiable, right? So the starting point, the foundation you're coming from is a non-negotiable. Everything else you have agency over now. If you choose actions that do not help you towards being your best self, that's actually within your control all along. So now to anchor it, look at your intention. Intend that with that new positive thought and the actions that follow from it, that they are purely for the sake of Allah. This will purify everything that you do. And it's not easy, right? It's really not easy. It's something that requires a lot of awareness as well. Because you might be doing good things and feel like, okay, this is great. Like, I just naturally want to help this person. I just naturally want to pick this thing up out of people's way so they don't get hurt. Or, I want to do this for so-and-so, or my job is serving people. And I just but are you actually thinking about the deeper reason of why you're doing that? Is it just to make yourself feel good? Is it just, because you think this is the right thing to do in general? Or, what if you anchor it now to be purely for the sake of Allah? How much more powerful does that action become? And it's interesting because it's so empowering, but it's empowering because it takes the pressure off of you. Like you're not doing things because you're good at it, because you're so great. You have all these skills, you have X amount of education. That's not really the reason you're doing it anymore, right? If you're doing something purely for the sake of Allah, then how genuine will the attempt be, the efforts be? And what things will you put effort into, even if you didn't feel like you were adequately skilled or prepared for that, right? You might find a way to do things that you wouldn't do otherwise, right? It takes that credit away from you as well, in a way. Like, it's not you. You're not the one doing this thing. Allah is helping you do it, and you're doing it purely for His sake. It's just so freeing. SubhanAllah. And it transforms any work that you do from self-help. This is where kind of the self-help industry stops, right? There's so much good advice out there about how to be better, how to live a better life, but it stops at you oftentimes. It's like, okay, I love myself. I believe in myself. But we're shifting it to a much deeper level, into spiritual growth, right? So that your soul can be at its best. It's not just about, being the best in your body or in your abilities in the world, but for your soul to be in its best state and for your soul to grow. All right, so we're going to stop here. But before we go, I would love to hear your feedback. So what have you guys gotten from this episode? What are you taking away? And do you think you're going to use the belief audit? And maybe I'll just go over that one last time for you guys, okay? So let's go over the steps for the belief audit. And then this way you have that for sure, and you can give it a try. And then come back to this video and comment and let me know, what did you find? What beliefs did you find that you thought were true, that weren't true? What results did you choose to change and shift? So I'm going to go in a step-by-step basis right now, okay? So step one, it's identifying your current negative results. So think of a recurring negative pattern in your life. It could be your financial situation, marriage situation, it could be burnout, procrastination, difficulty maintaining boundaries. Do any of those sound familiar? So identify your current negative results and then write it down. That's your R. Okay, so this is reverse engineering. Then you're going to go to step 2. You're going to trace it back. Well, what are the actions and feelings that are creating this result? What action did I take that is leading to this burnout, right? Maybe you're not getting enough sleep at night. What is leading to procrastination? Maybe you're leaving everything to the last minute. You're doing other things maybe that are less important. If you're not maintaining boundaries, are you not speaking up for yourself? What are the actions, right? And then what is the action preceded by? What feelings are associated with those actions? And once you identify all of that, then you're going to uncover that limiting thought, okay? Because your feelings are coming from your thoughts. So what sentence is in your head that you are holding as an absolute truth that is potentially untrue, or at least it's not serving you? Because some of the ones, it could be debatable, some things what are true, but they're all true for you. A belief is something that is true for you. You get to decide what's true for you. Okay. And notice how that belief is actually proven by the negative result you're having in your life. So for example, you're going to write down your examples here. All right. Then you're going to reframe that lie into a truth. So you're going to replace your limiting thought with something new, something empowering, and hopefully something rooted in, that best stature that you've been created in and your fitrah that's oriented towards the worship purely of God, your creator, and your commitment to him. Something beneficial, right? A truly beneficial belief, a truly beneficial thought that is going to drive you to beneficial actions that you can be happy with and pleased with and satisfied with, inshallah. So if you had something like, I don't deserve success or ease, then remember that you were created in the best stature. You deserve peace and ease, and you can take actions that provide you with it. And one of those is following God's guidance and trusting and relying on him. Now, if you think you have to compete with other women to prove your worth, for example, then know that each one of you is worthy. And you can only compete in goodness, the actions that you do, right? And knowing that it's God who provided whatever anyone else has to all of us. And whatever anyone else did is by permission of God only, right? So seek help with him so that you can take even better actions, so you can get even better results, inshallah. So an intention might be, if you write down what your intention will be each time you do this practice, it can turn that cognitive exercise into an act of worship, right? It's making it for his sake alone. So something like, I intend purely for the sake of Allah to practice my new thoughts every time the old ones appear, knowing that by nurturing my mind, I'm fulfilling the trust that he placed in me and empowering myself to serve him better. What a beautiful intention that would be, right? How would that shift and change your life on a regular basis? Okay, good. Alhamdulillah. All right, so this is where we'll end. I'll see you guys next week, inshallah. Please subscribe to the AFCAT Institute channel. There are a lot of amazing videos for you here. So if you want to go right over to our channel after this and check out some of the other videos, we have a video series called Islam Explained, where Sheikh Zakaria Baksh answers common questions that people have about different aspects of Islam. So if you have your own questions, you can go ahead and comment on any of those videos, and he will create a video addressing that in the future, inshallah. Sister Fitrah, who was here with me on the last few weeks, she's going to be also putting out some new videos about the family called Light in the Home. So look out for those as well. So don't forget to subscribe, and I hope to see you again next week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.